Deeper and deeper I go. I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, a learning experience for all ages. Tonight, our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, and I are pleased to present Heir Identity Crisis, Why We Are Confused About Who We Are. But before we begin, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. And let me start off by apologizing to you all because I got the times mixed up. I know we normally start at 7:30, but I apparently put the 8 o'clock time, Grand Sheik, that office hours is. So we apologize, y'all. Thank you all for coming. Let those folks that were here at 7:30 know that they can come on now. and we're here, but I couldn't change some things once it was too late when we realized I'd made the mistake. But that's what happens, when you're doing a whole bunch of things. Grand Sheik, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you again.
And it seems like I haven't seen you forever and ever. But
yes, busy playing catch up.
Yeah,
more catch up than we put on French fries. Whatever.
Yeah. That's a joke. Yeah. Grand Sheik brought me some fries tonight. And he said, I'm just going to put a little ketchup on it. And he meant it. It was, how you drizzle stuff. It wasn't even a drizzle. It was like, I had to, how they say finding Nemo?
Yeah.
I was trying to find ketchup. But thank you. Thank you for the thought.
Anyway, Islam
Assalamu
alaikum. Shalom. Salam. Vadi Mekum. Bon abort. Our conversation is more or less as we were talking earlier, Dr. J, because this is one of the damaging parts of our socialization currently. And as we were talking earlier, and you saying, well, a lot of the people aren't scholars, and I'm saying to you, I'm really continuing what I was saying earlier.
But I wasn't saying that as a slight.
No, I know.
Yeah,
that.
I was saying that from a standpoint of when you say it, normally you're saying it because you feel like people should know this. And
no, I always refer, when I say that, I'm referring to people who present arguments.
Okay.
And serious arguments, and then make it public. In the rule of human communication, such persons are assumed to be, and you have a right to assume them to be, at least minimal scholars.
All right.
The subject matter would be that of anthropology. And when they start doing things or making statements that reflect their biases, they are by rule to be corrected, or at least interjection should be made for correction. So you have, in the chronology of anthropology, you have what you call known timelines and migrations. All of this is involved. And when you see them leaning on arguments that reflect their biases more than it reflects the recorded facts, you don't reject them, but you interject what you would call recorded facts to the known dispensations in general. Not unlike, like say for instance, if you're a singer, a serious artist, you generally would have a general knowledge of people, singers that one sing the styles that you like, and a general knowledge of the timelines when they were working on their crafts and sharing it with the public. Likewise, is like say, if you were a pedagogue, right? So if you're a pedagogue, you would be doing some research.
If I was a teacher of children.
Yeah, that's the pedagogue.
I know, but in case I'm just saying for people who may not know. If I was a teacher.
All right. So good. If you're a serious teacher, you would know about pedagogy because that is in the line of what you yourself are projecting to the public. I mean, once you start projecting to the public, you have at least a minimal level of responsibility that you should be held to by both your peers and the general public. When you're sharing information for the sake of uplifting people, you make the effort of sharing some of the rules with the general populace that you're speaking to bring them to a higher level of competency, or it's no use of you speaking to them at all. Yeah. You don't, meaning that knowing that many people, as an example, because of the social engineering here, we already know that we know in general that our people have been groomed under animal husbandry. We know that. It's not hidden. It's in the general philosophy page of the General Education Board, 1902. So that means any people who seriously care about their children or about themselves or about the so-called educational system operating in the Western Hemisphere that most people's taxes go to, the major part of your tax, as an example, the major part of the tax that's put on people's private property that isn't their property, but is held as being property, tax, goes to the so-called education system. That's the largest part. Therefore, if someone's seriously concerned about children's education, number one, they would know that because they're paying for it, and it ain't free. Even if a politician tells you that, you already know that they're lying. And you wouldn't promote that to your children, honestly, if you're really seriously concerned about that matter. And if you don't know, that means that you're really not serious about being qualified to try to fix that problem. Meaning, so it would not be intelligent or fair to ourselves or to our children to argue about poor education in our community and never have read the philosophy that sets the standard for that so-called education that's imposed upon our children that we pay the majority of our taxes to support, and then make arguments about it. That's where I'm coming from, Dr. G.
Okay.
And so when I make those kind of statements, I'm not knocking or coming at our people at large. What I am knocking is the people that keep having these titles that make these broader arguments and haven't done what you would call minimal research, and it becomes apparent to someone who knows basic. No different than when we were working, as an example, across the street, right? And it, for a while, because I was busy doing other things, right? But yet people were still working over there. This is before we re-entered the building and start fixing. Things that were on the schedule to be done included the rot that was at the back door, before we put the back door that was there. Even before the original work was done, you had me come and open the wall and fix some leaks in the wall that were ongoing for years.
Right.
That was behind a wall cavity that was like this. And at that time, you let me know that it used to be a salon in there, and that plumbing was behind that wall. Upon opening that wall, there was damage that was to be done. And because we had a break in things that we were doing over there, and finance needed to be raised to do that, I ended up, when we went back, to tear that whole back floor up that was actually covered up with tile, right? And restructured that whole floor, which was originally scheduled to be done the first time. But because of limited knowledge by whoever did that, or awareness of that, all that work had to be torn back up. And then that was done. Same thing, meaning that, but from a serious perspective, if someone's doing that work and they're a contractor, they would have recognized the weakness in the floor themselves and would not have done that, covered that up. They would have, even though it was major, done what we had to end up doing, as an example. So if you're compensating someone to make what you call a reparational charge, which is on the board of conversation across this land in recent years, again, and even being perpetrated by politicians today in different corporate state areas about reparations, which is going on right now. If someone is going to take a position to make that argument, they should do a little bit of research on who are the heirs, who are the true people of the land, to qualify the argument before the ICJ. And that would be the International Criminal Court, or the Hague, which would be those venues that such arguments would be made in order to charge not the entity, but the beneficiaries of corporate descendancy who benefit from the injuries for which the reparations must be made. Because even as you would know, that those who originated the injuries are no longer in physical body.
True.
But in responsibility, you would have to have a relationship or identification of the what you call corporate or succeeding corporate heirs that benefit and are currently operative to the beneficiary of the estate that was injured. Therefore, all parties must be identified. And because you have general generational descendancy, you would seek to see or to find the most what you call pure blood or pedigrees that's left that would be identified as proper heir. And you would have to go through that. Now, what many people are doing, as you already know, in current years, because they're trying to fix some of this stuff, they're allowing the colonial hybrid occupiers to determine the DNA operations, and they've created a whole business on that and benefited. And even people from the same families have tested the system and find them to be more than flawed, and recognize that there's been a political agenda even behind that, even where you had twins sending stuff to these different so-called DNA.
And getting two different
readings. Yeah, and getting totally different readings. Mm-hmm. Now, that's because that's what you would be called the demographics of the political and anthropological migrations, much of which has been chronologized and some which has not, but it's the natural source of what you call natural political geographical migrations. So you got to take that into consideration. Then you take into consideration where even you may have even some people that are making certain claims just politically, and they may have what you call territorial, political, geopolitical citizenship classifications that would give an appearance of political jurisdiction, but are not actually what you call pedigree valid, but they are politically valid. And this is where when you're getting into what you call an heirship argument relative to reparations, you have to actually go into pedigree. And then you have to go into actual anthropological knowledge and geopolitical identifications and migrations and start establishing a timeline. And then they start looking at that and making what you call an aggregate refinement to come to what you call a litigated aggregate. Then determinations are made. Now, these things need to be known to our people who keep having these kind of conversations, not because you're condemning their lack of knowing it, but knowing that those who have caused the injury don't teach geopolitics as a subject matter upon suppressed people, so that they're not qualified to make an argument. Knowing that, and for those who want to help in the matter, know certain missing keys. And if it's sort of like informing the uninformed on certain subject matters that are necessary for arguments that they themselves are making to try to repair themselves politically and economically. And that if they're not at least basically, minimally groomed in the knowledge of these disciplines, they would be disqualified because they would be incompetent for airship. And they would be relegated back to what they're trying to get away from, and that is state wardship, which is the classification, state wards, state wardship, wardship tenures, stateless persons, and general wards relative to what is generally referred to in past tense here politically in the geopolitics, which you're familiar with, which would be called, and this is key, Freedmen's Bureau that they taught about in school, right? The official would be Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. That needs to be totally analyzed. And this is why a lot of times when we're getting into these conversations, I would tell people before you get seriously arguing these issues, study lands in law, and then let's have the conversation. Now, and when knowing that most of them won't do that, they'll say, well, you're putting that on them because most people don't have law books, but they got $200 sneaks on and Gucci belts and blouses and stuff that they keep buying with other people's names on it that they pay or give heavy compensation for to give images to people. And then they want people who they consider have the qualification to make these arguments for them. And they often compensate people that they call attorneys and lawyers to deal with estate issues and don't even know that what estate issues are because they won't take the time to read what it is, which is another reason why, like, even when we were talking last time and we were talking King Alfred, and it was said these people keep wanting the benefit of these sciences and won't study any of them. Then they hire politicians and lawyers to do this for them. Then they get raped. Then they want to complain. And then they start a whole bunch of organizations that won't put the basic tools in place in relationship to what these people are asking for. Then they'll argue with people who take the position to try to help them because they don't understand what's going on, but they want the benefit. And so they take that may be one of the reasons. And then you see them make the statement right in King Alfred that they're going to leach their substance and then devour them. And they say it. It's documented. Now, people who are real scholars understand the political agenda of the geopolitics, but they keep presenting these geopolitical conversations and won't have a geopolitical conversation with the people that they keep looking or trying to talk to try to solve these economic political problems that we have. And so because we have been negligent in these matters, the occupiers have systematically used what they have publicly written, the animal husbandry, to create a schism operations that they've written that they're going to do. It's not like they did it in the dark and our people needed to figure this out. They said they're going to do it. They've been doing it. Now, let's look at the logistical outcomes. Broken families, relationships don't work. They're now on their later campaign that they wrote they were going to do, where they're making our women look like used mop examples of the lowest level of female womanry around the world, a total mockery. And we're still looking at this stuff as if these are just simply problems in our community, and all those are results and logistical operations of an ongoing war that never ended, that we've been diverted to call it racism and prejudice that we got to work with, and we got broken families, and the men and women pretty much then fell into this gender war, not knowing that this is part of the attack on heirs who don't know their heirs. And some of them got a little bit of the information, are using the political classification designations that are related to us, but are not who we are, in the name of identity to try to fix this stuff. And so we're having an anthropological, geopolitical conversation with people who are not studied in this area, with the hopes of helping a little bit. I'm presenting to you, back to what we were saying earlier, the reason I do that, because I know that persons who have been doing a little bit of involvement in these type of arguments know that it's geopolitics, know that it's anthropology, know that there's a timeline on the reconstruction of history, because they're making these serious arguments with our people, and that the root of heirship, or what you call qualified heirship, is that you must be in honor of your mothers and fathers. In the civil realm, it would be called natal identity. Rather than being direct and simple about it, they'll say DNA and stuff like that they got our people all emotionally involved in these last 20 years. When the real deal of it is, yes, that's true. Yes, it's true, to a limit. Because you have the geopolitical chronology of what you call nation states, some of which did not exist even 25 to 30 years ago, that are valid in the geopolitics today, no different than many of the nation states that are politically acknowledged to this very day, 100 years ago, did not exist. And many of them, upon which these heritability claims are being made, are currently, and this is the most obvious one that's happening right now, is in what is known as the Palestinian occupation, that is being rewritten as Israel. This is current. And in a couple of decades, it was intended that Palestine would be forgotten out of history, but they're the heirs. And the people who are making the claim on the land, and they're even fighting a war for it, and these people here are paying for it too, right? Or keep projecting out of their mouths, Israel, that's not Israel. But they are doing what? They're creating what is called the vision, which later becomes mental, which becomes political realities, not political truths, that are actually an action of disinheriting true heirs. And the pattern is the same one that was used here. It's not even different. That we refer to, one of them we refer to as the Trail of Tears. Another one we refer to as the Niagara Movement. Now, all the children and most of the say people from the early ages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as soon as they become cognate, right? and even those who are like in the 30s and 40s, right? All they know is NAACP, but they don't know anything about the Niagara Rebellion and the murder, slaughter of the many of the Mohawks, right, of that area, right, who are Penici tribes, ancient Mohawk clans, Mohican clans, right, honesty, right, who were classified after hybrid European colonial operations and Reconstruction via the Whigamore parties and New York Times, Horace Greeley, rewriting history, this the 1863 stuff. Now they become Indians and Negroes and mulattoes, right? And colored people. Now, among themselves, they're scattered because many of them take these different terms and then look at themselves as different people. Now, the conqueror starts giving them a timeline when they so-called brought them here, which they didn't. And then they start arguing among themselves, which is called military schism, about who got here first and who didn't. When the deal of it is, the one who is the occupier now controls the narrative of who's who. And when the people woke up a little bit, now he's controlling the argument of the DNA. And it's a business, multi-billion-dollar business since they set that up, that they done made off these same people that still don't know who they are. And so we have an identity crisis that the people, many of the people who started doing the DNA start thinking that they're the cure. And here's the one who created the problem, who's made a multi-billion-dollar business off of telling them the cure. Hold on, now that the people are getting even a little more awake, they opened up the borders, allowing and promoting other Americans, clans, to come in another part of America and calling the other Americans foreigners. And we're feeding into that right now. Chicago, the whole Michigan area, right? Honestly area, right? Are being projected or groomed mentally right now to look at their other Moorish American tribes as foreigners controlled by the foreigner who's a hybrid European under the unum sanctum operations, telling them that these people, foreigners, are taking their jobs while so-called giving them, and I think the current politics is that they're giving them a 20,000 a month now with an open credit card. And all of the areas where they call them sanctuary cities, now they got these people, they're creating political arguments for the abs of the, when I say abs, I'm talking about aboriginals / indigenous of the North. Half of them think they're black, half of them think they're Negroes, half of them think they're mulattoes, so they're already in schism, are looking at other American tribes and clans coming back to lands that ancestrally they're all a part of. And he's created a total new geopolitical dilemma, knowing that the real intent, because the people don't understand the geopolitics, is to force CBDCs on these people, which we talked about a few months ago when we did this, because I already knew what they're doing. But I also know if these people don't really get a little grounded in the geopolitics, we will fall for it and help him destroy us by destroying ourselves based on ignorance. And people among our own who know these things, who don't want to go there because they have to take the responsibility to start teaching our people and say, well, we won't talk about this because they don't understand it. Well, you may as well sacrifice them, because that's what they intend for us to do. They know that that's what we have a tendency to do. And they almost are well on their way of not having to worry about us falling right into this trap of the geopolitical destruction of our people. And it's very clear. And then those who really don't understand the politics, and also who think they have money, and this has with a lot of the brothers and stuff, because I see them doing this. They're going to the Philippines, they're going to Colombia, they're going to other places to try to escape the gender wars of our own women who they think don't like them, because that's also part of their training, right? Which guarantees that we will not be in unity to defend our nativity, i.e. nations, tribes, and thus will have abandoned our lands and left them to the hands of the U.S., which is an acronym for Unum Sanctum Operations, with their corporate arm of the Jesuit, known as the United States Corporation Company, registered in Austria, operated from Davos, Switzerland, which we've been telling people for years that they think is not related to any of this stuff that we've been talking about. And it's right on us right now. It's not coming. It's right on us right now. That's why I be talking the way I talk, because I always saw this crap coming. But we have to come to a point of taking some responsibility and actually doing what you taking some unshading the timelines, not unlike what I was saying to you earlier, which you sharing with me. 19 white men who admitted there were indigenous Black people in the Americas. On its face, it appears to be an acknowledgement of the real geopolitical and airship descendancy of who the Americans are, and not themselves. At the same time, knowing that most of our people that are passionately trying to fix this thing or dealing with reparations are going to run to this, because it appears to be, oh, somebody's telling the truth finally. Mm-hmm. However, an anthropologist, someone who really knows geopolitics, immediately sees the animal husbandry and the connotative linguistics, which the average person doesn't see because they're not trained in reading that we've always talked about. Why they removed etymology, and why they removed, or what you call why they interjected the 1863 convention animal husbandry training, reinforcing the psychosis of the animal husbandry of 1902 with the John D. Rockefellers. The same Rockefellers is the same ones that set up this whole thing that's going on right now in West Asia, that our people who are still under the spell think is Middle East. And so if you're seriously making an argument on behalf of the true heirs, you have to start telling the truth to counter the masking. And when I be making those statements, Dr. G, and it's not intended to be abrasive, is because that's where my mind is all the time. And so I'm speaking from that perspective, not because I want to be disagreeable or critical, or people who are trying to how do you say, start fix these things. But I know if they don't deal with the truth, they'll never fix it. And if we keep letting generations go by, they are guaranteed done. And this is back to if we're going to talk heritability, right? Mm-hmm. And heirship. If you're talking reparations, do these people know that's at the root of their argument? No, most of them don't. What happens in law? An heir that is out of honor automatically, and this is worldwide, this is not just here, are relegated to wardship. Then they would try to identify, well, what political state, corporate state, is the ward keeper? So now you have people who are in wardship that don't know their wards, but they're emotionally arguing a right or a heritability that they are not aware requires a qualification on their part, beginning what is known loosely as identity. Now, so when you're dealing with the identity, what they would do is by aggregate litigation, remove all known nom de guerres, all known political oriented schism, tags, and classifications and misclassifications to identify the aggregate pedigree. And they would do that even with the parties that make claim. No different than, as we've said before, right? And this is what it's an example. And this is why we often use this, Dr. G. And respectfully and with patience, I want to show you how serious this matter is, because it is a serious matter. And the world is starting to deal with this, even though many of our people are not aware that that's going on, because they're not aware of the geopolitics that's taking place, because we're looking more or less at our immediate economic, social, political problems. And we think that some of these things that were mentioned don't necessarily relate to us if we're not interested in it. Well, we can feel that way, but it's not that way. Now, and we've done this often, over and over again, right? And we've made the analysis, right? But yet I want to give support to this, because even with this title, right? Even with that title, right? Yeah. Even with that title, right? The average person who's reading, this is what you call a presupposition, constructed argument for true heirship. But yet most people would read this and wouldn't look at it that way. Because remember, most people, because of their animal husbandry training, they surface read. And even then, they're not dealing with chronology in their mind. They're not dealing with geopolitics in their mind. They're dealing with a perception of identity in order to make a claim without a knowledge of what you call reversion of a state, because that's not a subject matter that's taught among our people, which is at the root of any argument, whether you're dealing with any level of heritability, any level, corporal or incorporeal, or in particular, what is popularized currently, reparations. And all of these so-called scholars of all these leading groups and stuff that keep on arguing about our people or indigenous should be focused on teaching our people the rules of heritability, the qualified conditions. They're not complicated. They just haven't been taught. Are we clear?
May I interject? When you think in terms of, regardless of what status we may have been in at the time, a lot the migrations, like I know my father's people migrated north from Georgia, so they ended up some in Delaware, and I'm sure places in between Delaware and a lot in Detroit area. So you got people who have been migrating, and they're moving from the place.
And those are they're what you call modernity. That would be listed in political geopolitics as modernity, most recent contemporary migrational modernity, right? So that's what we're talking about at this time, right?
But my question is when those people do that, a lot of times, they've disconnected a lot sometimes, especially the generations after the generation that migrated, they tend to identify, say, with the area.
Now a new geographical, political territorial identity related to, but actually distinguished from pedigree. And what has happened over the generations is that our people don't know the distinction because they are not taught geopolitics because we're under occupation. And part of the missionary operations is them to steal our estates, or what you call land thefts. Therefore, it's necessary for them to interject not only nom de guerre, or what you call misnomers, you also must create what you would call political classifications, then set the people politically within those classifications so that the people start taking the classifications as identities that makes them disqualified to heirship. But they don't know that because they don't know rules of inheritance. In other words, what they've been doing, what the hybrids have been doing, is that they've been generationally and systematically reconstructing history. And what we already know, we've discussed it for years, introduced deliberately, I'm telling what the classification is, connotative linguistics. That's not an opinionated analysis. That's a factual socialization introduction. That's real. That's true. People not knowing this, and you, me, anyone trying to help these people make a right of claim that don't address those injuries, you taking some, it's sort of like jumping in the middle of the ocean with sharks around. There's someone who can't swim because you're trying to save them, and you're worried about how you grab their arm or how you delicately caress them to try to bring them to shore or to a boat while they're struggling because they don't understand body fat and that if you calm down, you'll almost float. They don't understand that. You can't teach them. And if you're not careful, they'll drown both of you. This is known. This is one of the things that they teach you if you're ever done lifeguard. In social engineering, you must understand what's broken. You must have some knowledge of what's broken in order to begin to fix it. What I presented from the beginning, and that's not even complete, but it is this: the geopolitics, geopolitical, historical dissertations, right? Chronologies, anthropologies, and migrational historical research with ancillary helps, which is what we're talking. And it goes broader than this because we haven't even gotten to the animal husbandry and the engineering operations in specific relative to status of state, impropriate persona, things of the like, and territorial jurisdictions, whether you're dealing in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, territorial jurisdictions, which are all operative every day in all political venues around the world, not limited to us. I already know that as subject matters, these things are not daily discussions among our people who have been the aggregate target of countermeasures to these matters that has created much of the confusion and schism that our people have among themselves, even when they're trying to fix it, which is why it usually deduces to an emotional banter and people having meetings not knowing anything about culture and traditions that are at the root of what is known as common law. Therefore, they don't even know they're dealing with jurisprudence issues relative to heirship, relative to descendability, relative to wardship tenures that's they're operating in, relative to civil liter mortuus, which is the legal operative status that these people are held to, that they've been trained is racism and prejudice, which is where they're going to argue, where they're going to go and argue because of their training, right? Which immediately disqualifies them to descendancy, right? Now, when people are arguing the things that are happening to us, that's not on their mind. I know that already, and I'm pretty sure that you already know that, because when we're talking, that's interjected as in earlier. You know. Now, so that creates what? A social and political and economic crisis, doesn't it? Which is what we're in. It's not that what we've arrived to. We've been in it for generations. The issue currently is that it's gotten so bad that it's obvious that civilized, or what you call traditional institutional structures, are literally collapsing undeniably. Undeniably, meaning, you know, like it gets so broke that no one can no longer ignore it. No different than a couple years back, right? You asked me to get a couple pieces of tiles to fix in a certain area, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And at that time, I mentioned that we need to fix this faucet and this sink and this old and blah blah blah, right? Now, I'll go look at it again. Now, turn it on, water all over the place. So it has to be totally shut down, non-functional, because when you do, it's going to run all over the place, right? So now we're forced to fix it, right? Forced to fix it. Not that we couldn't have done it before, but it wasn't priority because we were doing a lot of things here, there, everywhere, right? And then when I leave here, I got other stuff that I'm neglecting elsewhere. My brother-in-law called me this morning, my sister been calling me, my daughter's been calling me, right? And I'm half-time right now. If I wasn't here, I would have already been up New York, as an example, right? Because I'm only one person. But I'm not going to hire someone to pay and compensate them thousands of what I would go do and fix with a couple hundred and keep it moving, because I don't have an agenda to make a living off of them, if you get the point. But if someone else was doing what I'm doing when I go over there,
I know.
They would have to go deep in the bank account. Deep, not light. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Now, likewise, with us as a people, for those who know what's really wrong, that we're really under occupation, they would not be continuously projecting race arguments with our people to make them feel good about us talking about, quote unquote, the white man, who we know is not the white man, but because everybody's used to calling him the white man, we tell them what we like to hear. They like to hear the white man, which calls them sovereign. Calls them sovereign of the land, because that's what we're doing legally. So we're projecting that. So they're going to tell their children that that's who it is. So they don't even know that politically they're the white man that has been overthrown, because they think it's an identity. They think it's a complexion when it's a political status.
Sovereign.
Because that's what it means. Now, a scholar knows this. So if he's feeding a naive public that they're implying that they're trying to fix this social economic problem with, and that they want to, repair this damage, social damage, and that politically, that social damage by law is called reparations under international law principles. So there are principles involved, because you're making a reversion of a state claim, because that's what you're doing. Now, if someone who keeps setting up all these organizations, having all these meetings, don't tell the real chronology, right? And we're talking the political migrations, right? Minimal competence, and the pedigree, not what you were called by those who occupied you, your claim is dead. So they're already preparing these people for failure, knowing that they're not going to get reparations if they don't fix the root of the problem. Because it's not a popular conversation, they're avoiding it deliberately. But the results of failure, they're going to blame on the white man. He already knows that that's what's coming, that these people ain't going to get reparations, because they're unwilling to be honorable to their own bloodline because they don't know the rules of heritability. But they're going to argue a heritability issue. Most of them don't even know anything about the ICJ, the Hague, but the argument that they're going to make going to go first there in order to pressure the occupiers, who will be hiding behind the Constitution, of which they're not a part and are actually enemies to, that our people are trained in school, came from them, and it didn't. It was given to them and adopted by them under treaty agreement.
Is that from
that came from the tribes here, the clans here, in most direct communication on Honesty Confederation, reconstructed as Iroquois. Then they'll say Iroquois Indians. It's on Honesty Confederation. Now, the point that I'm making to you, you notice how they keep on creating layers that bury the truth? Then when we adopt them, because everybody's accepted them, that becomes the political reality, but it's still not the political truth. What they keep doing is they're going to put more and more layers on it, and this is how they bury. No different than right here, and this is the example, right, Dr. J? When we go into this dictionary, 1828, right? And we know it's not the first, but we're just going back, say 100 and some years, right? Now remember, 1828, right? So we see American, right? So American is a native of America, right? So now we must know what native means. That's a designation, that's not identity, right? So if a person doesn't know that that's a designation, right? A political classification, some people who don't know would take that as an identity and try to argue it from that perspective. They would be flawed. Are we clear? Meaning that, all right, so now a hybrid European would be a native of the territories of when the hybriding began. You see? And generally they would be referred to as modern man because he's not what? He's not he's not first. He's not indigenous anywhere. They don't even refer to themselves as indigenous because they know that they're modern man. But they're not going to say hybrid, are they? Because that's the truth, right? So if he wasn't original, that means either he dropped out of the sky, which he didn't do, right? How could you be at Midgard, right, and have a contemporary history and then have no ancient history? Which means you have an origin that's not being necessarily explained into history. So now they're not going to tell you about, though they know Jacob's ladder, or Yakub being experienced. Even with the Yakub, they ain't going to say Yakub, they'll say Jacob. It's another cover-up of connotative linguistics, right? They're not going to tell you about that the Algonquian tongues here can be traced to what you call Persic or an Urdu. That's tied around the world, which means we were not isolated. Do you see the point that I'm making? But yet people, when they're talking to contemporary history, they'll try to make this seem all isolated, and that the Asiatics here that are tagged as Black were brought here by hybrid Europeans when we are the people of the land. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So now you have what you call stating of timeline, which is an social engineering, not mistake, deliberation to create what you call socialized disassociation. So that creates among most of our children, when they come here, they'll start talking about Columbus, won't they? Like everything began with Columbus. They'll even say that the hybrids, right? Now look at this, right? and I'll show you the art of the connotative linguistics, right? And those artificial interjections, right? It says American, right? Pertaining to America. So now at that point, first sentence with a period. So that now you're dealing with geography, right? Right? Now you're dealing with the anthropology. Second, with an adjective, right? A native of America, right? Now you're dealing with timeline classification. Originally, so now you're dealing with origin. So origin in what you would call a designation would mean first or root. That's what that means. That's why when they did that movie Roots, that's why they call Roots, because you're dealing with Aboriginal principle, right? So originally applied to Aboriginals or copper-colored races. So now that's who the original Americans are. So now you look at the land, the copper land, and so you know when you're dealing with copper or you're mining copper, you know that copper is dark brown, rutted, and also what you call very rustic in its nature or its color. Very dark brown, very dark, up into medium browns and amber and umber complexions. Right?
I think it's
so that's the Americans. Now,
how about this part though? You didn't read that. You
yes.
said copper color races, but the next
then
part is
found, which now it implies
they were
that puts him in a power position. See, so now he's found them type thing, right?
But it also said that that means we were here.
Yeah, of course. But I want you to show you how linguistically how they're doing the social engineering. This is one of the reasons why we always tell people who do any what you call scholarly research, not only do what you call etymological construct, also recognize, you know, the Germanic or the Franciscan operations here at North America, or what they would refer to as Reconstruction. So our people just look at hybrid Europeans walking around with muskets and stuff like that, and they say the Civil War and Reconstruction. They don't know that it's reconstructing history and the social order too. But I want you to pay attention to this because it's not new, but I want you to see this because it's obvious to anyone who can read, right? So it says what? Found here by the Europeans, but now we're dealing with timeline. But now, that means now contemporary. So that means this is not original, right? But now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Now you come from what in political socialization and geopolitics, you're dealing with just soleil and just sanguinis that our people aren't taught. So now if you're dealing with reparation, you must separate just soleil and just sanguinis, because the just sanguinis are Aboriginal and indigenous. Just soleil is political designation under political, what you call ens legis, legislated operations. So this is where you have what you call the Naturalization Act that we talk about when we talk about Horace Greeley, when we talk about the Whiggamore Party, Cotton Whigs, Conscience Whigs, the Naturalization Act 1870, Ulysses Grant, the Alteration, the 1854 operations at Philadelphia, the Mummery, which means that's where they got mum's the word, where they reconstruct and create a new narrative, and then they do the ritual of the narrative, which they would call the Mummers Parade at Philadelphia, and they would assemble at 6 and More Street, ritually, 6 and More Street, Philadelphia. Then you deal with the Odd Fellows, where they met down there in Carpenter's Hall and altered the records and the journals and start reconstructing the record. And now all of a sudden, you got Negroes, blacks, mulattoes, colored people, of the indigenous people, right? Then, of course, you have the operations, which we talked about before, which is Department of the DOD, Department of Defense, and stuff like that. Calhoun and them, they set up the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Then they set up the abandoned lands, saying that we abandoned the lands. Of course, they ran us out and moved us all over the place, and then called the lands abandoned. And you'll see every one of the wars thereafter, even with the GI Bill and all that stuff, where they start giving our lands. And this is even as late as the Second World War. The different hybrid Europeans, which is why they did what you call the redlining. All of these things are a continuation of the same war, the very same war that our people keep thinking ended, with the Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France. Then you have the Franciscan Brotherhood, which operates here with 12 sections that they made into the regions that you have right now. That's why you have the IRS has 12 regions. But the people who don't know the geopolitics don't know that the 12 regions of the IRS are totally tied to the 12 orders of the Franciscan order that took over the Order of Islam, overthrew 1863, reconstructed the history. Whigam Party, 1854, the hybrid Europeans take on the title of the sovereign of the land, which is white, which is a political classification, and why people keep avoiding going into teaching our people the real jurisprudence, so that our people will start themselves calling the occupiers white men, which means that the heir are applying to fiduciary position for those who actually colonize them, because they don't understand the language and no one's going to tell them. And then the people among our own who are made overseers are brought into the secret societies, given a Moorish fez, and take an oath to the Jesuits not to reveal the secrets, given 33 degrees of basic knowledge, given journeyman 3 degrees, given the history, given a symbol of the Great Seal that no one used except John Hanson. None of the praetors, none of the presidents ever used the Great Seal except John Hanson. That's the record. And who was John Hanson? Who was John Hanson?
First president, so-called creator.
Say it again?
Creator, the first. And he was up more
of the Republic or the democracy?
Of the Republic.
It was overthrown.
Right.
So he was the first. Who have they been telling the people who was the first?
George Washington.
What was he really? The ninth, right?
Somewhere like
now,
that.
Yeah, but I'm showing you the politics that our people are not taught, because of the misuse and the abuses coming from the hybrid Europeans, right? Our people are told that history has nothing to do with us, and they reject it, and yet they're controlling our estate. Are we clear? And so if these people are going to be redeemed, or what you call receive reparations, they have to argue to the fiduciary, against the fiduciaries. Who are the fiduciaries?
The ones who are overseeing
the occupiers. They would be called the wards of the wardship tenure military operations over the wards.
They'll be like the governors, the politicians.
Now, let's do research. Politically, if you deal with a sociological dictionary, what would they tell you that Bey means?
Governor.
Exactly. Now you understand why all of the broken up territories have governors. They're substitute Beys. Now we're talking about documented geopolitics that our people they at least need to know this, so they know whether they agree or not is not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing if we're going to make qualified arguments before the world, the nations of the earth, in order to take our places among the nations of the earth, we're going to have to really seriously start getting geopolitical knowledge. It's not missing information, it's just information we have not been interested in because no one has brought it to our attention that we're missing this. And usually when someone brings it up to them, opposition, or what you call the trolls, will start telling, oh, they're trying to change your religion. It's irrelevant, has not a damn thing to do with religion. But yet, whenever you bring that subject up, what do they immediately start talking about? Noble Ali, Moorish Science Temple of America.
Or whether or not it was a religious institution
established. Not the information, the facts that were brought, meaning they keep confusing the messenger and the message, as if the message began with the messenger. Are we clear? Rather than recognizing that the messenger brought the message for the restoration of the estate, and the people relate the message as beginning there, and it didn't. You know, it's sort of like someone making someone that they're aware of that they're heirs to an estate, and then they start thinking that the issue of the estate is an idea of the messenger, rather than that the messenger just informed you about your lost estate, and that you need to be made re-aware and erudite on your estate so that you can reclaim it, because it can't be given to you. You must claim it. Because remember, in the rule, international, and that's when by law is a fiduciary, right, obligated to return the estate to an heir. That heir must be qualified and competent to receive the estate. Now, is it not true? Because this is just a question presented. Those who are listening and in our conversation, isn't it true that in order for an heir to receive right of estate, that the heir must be competent, or someone who is descendable in the bloodline or the pedigree to receive the estate, corporal and incorporeal? That's rule of heirship. And so if you're talking from a nativity national perspective, we're talking rules of the planet. We're not talking limited to opinion. That means there must be representatives, just like we have like a tribal council, right? Different clans. You would have different clan leaders that are acknowledged by the people in accord with their own culture, that steps forth according to what? Already established rules to make claim of the estate. If no one does it, that means the estate is abandoned, which is the trick that they used when they ran or ran the people off the land and then called the lands abandoned.
And that's the same thing that they do in terms of foreclosing on someone.
That's why that principle is
property.
Used.
Yes.
That's because the principle don't change. But what I'm saying to you, Dr. J, because we talk all the time, but I'm still responding to your response to me and why I redundantly and sometimes with a little bit of irritation make them statements, because I know that these people know this. And because it's sort of like, because it's not taught on the surface, people don't immediately recognize the value of it. They just think it's part of our conversation and they dismiss it because they want to talk usually about a symptom of it. Because the symptoms are usually where the arguments have been made traditionally. But the reality of it is, those who know the social engineering know that as soon as people go there, that they just disqualify themselves.
But can I say this? Because you just made a statement with regard to how we would come together, with the clans and make these determinations and so forth, or whatever. You on the title, I'm going to throw this up just for as they say, for
let me give you another example.
Wait, I want you to respond to, like I said, just for shits and giggles. If you see the little logo we put here, there's a turban, because I just first did the fez and the feathers, and we went through a long, drawn out why I needed to also include the turban. And the fact that I'm getting back off of that, the fact that you were saying clans or versus whatever, the point I was making when I initially suggested this topic was the fact that we have so many different perspectives.
Yes.
Finding the common ground, even
that's why you got to know the geopolitics.
Right. So a turban, a fez, and a feather, Keela crown. Yeah. All of them are our people. And so we have people, we have some of us that are fighting each other,
which is based on military schism.
Yes, those particular things. And we wanted to, you don't know who you are if you don't realize that you're an amalgamation of all of that.
All right.
This is what one of the
best ways. One of the best ways to kind of know the culture a little bit. Bring as an example, Shield of Heraldry, if you can pull up Shield of Heraldry as an example of IAT.
Say what?
Shield of Heraldry of San Salvador, Brazil, any of your South Americans, Al-Moroccans, because remember they're Americans. Shield of Heraldry.
Coat of arms, or something else.
And I want you to examine, say, even of Trinidad.
Are we talking this?
All right, now I'm going to show you examples. Pull that up and bring it up.
Wait a minute. I have to go back over here and say I'm going to share. Present, share screen. I'm going to put this on share screen. Which one was it? This one? I guess that's the best I can do. Let me see if I'm sharing it. Well, it's not really big, but let me see if I can. Okay, that's about the best I can do. So there it is right there.
You can't make it any larger.
I mean,
so because I want you to see. I want you to see what I'm trying to show you.
Okay, y'all. Let me try to see.
You got it.
Let me see if I can make it bigger. Oops. Oh no. Let me do this. Make the screen bigger. How did I do that? That's about as big as I can do it. Let me get it by itself. There we go. Let me see.
You see that?
See what?
That's like soft.
Soft.
But that's more soft. That's your fez from the South.
Okay.
It's just like a fez. But I'm trying to show you. See it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this in the center represents a 7.
Right.
So you got. If you know the culture, you'll even see it in the shields of heraldry.
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad.
Let me see if I can make it bigger.
Here's another one. See that?
Yeah.
See, it's red, but it's soft.
Right.
Now, our people, because of their training here, keep thinking that stuff belongs to the European hybrids. It doesn't. It's your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see some of them where the feathers in there. And when you see us doing our what you call Four Corners celebrations, whether you're in Mexico, right,
mm-hmm.
or anywhere down there, right, the culture is cosmological. Key to the culture is 7. They'll structure things that will show the 7. That's to be your 6, and of course in the center that's your 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then the foundation tree represents foundation. And just like you see that tree, and when our people are looking at history and the Bible and everything, they be thinking that the palm tree is only on the other side. No, you're here. And of course we use it for food, fabric, etc. And then for those of you who are listening, pull up all shields of heraldry of all your Moroccan or American nations and study them, and you'll see coded in them will be 7 different forms of the fez or the turban, or look at your early military operations here in your congressional records and let them start talking about the leaders of different clans, and they'll usually refer to them as noble men and noble women. And you'll see them with turbans on, with jewels in them, and feathers. Then, even like when you go into Brazil in the areas or the South, more and more you'll see that the people will be wearing aquila crowns on particular celebrations, right? And also when they're having matrimony and stuff like that, right? And then look at the aquila crowns on the other sides, right? And you'll see identical structures. And they're old. They're not new. It's old stuff. Even Philadelphia's, right? When you look at Tammany, right? When you're going down to the river, right? Where the 676 and all that stuff, right? You'll see Tammany down there with Aquila on his shoulder, right? What is our relationship with Aquila? And then what is the relationship of the hybrid Europeans that adopt those principles? Even when you're dealing with Iberia. Now, when they took over Iberia, their major feature to you in history will be Germany, right? And Sicily. And you'll see them have Aquila, or double-headed like that. And then they'll show it as the double-headed eagle. And our people who don't know their history and culture think it's only on that side and think it belongs to them. What that double-headed Aquila represents is the 2 lobes of the brain.
Hemispheres, yeah.
Yes. And the 180 degrees represent, from a spiritual perspective, when they meet, or when you rise what they call to heaven, and that you break that barrier or cross that barrier of them 2, and then they become one sight. And that's usually used in 30th degree, mother and son knowledge that they call masonry, which is still your culture. But because the hybrids have corrupted it, our people think it belongs to them, as opposed to knowing that you have been occupied and they've taken it as they've always done and corrupted it. This is why even when the Knights Templars came over here, right? I think that's around, for those of you who are scholars and researchers, I think it's around 1857 area, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it's in that timeline. And then they blended themselves within the Masonic order and corrupted that, took over that. This is where you have, even with a lot of the operatives today that run all your secret societies, to assure that our people don't know the real history and the chronology, and that they didn't bring you, i.e. the Aboriginals, from anywhere, that you're the people of the land. But now, and also why they will teach, when they're teaching anthropology in contemporary terms, they will give you no more than 12,000 years, when they know that we've been here over 300,000.
I'm going to share this.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So we had talked about this earlier, y'all. And out of the book, One World, One America, some of you may have it, not sure. Like the fact that the model European that put this together has said, it's free to be copied and shared and whatever. So we're gonna share this part. We were talking about, and many times you've heard Grand Sheik talk about the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution. We're talking about identity crisis and stuff here. So,
and as an interjection, don't lose your thought.
Okay.
But this is important. This is why, because we have to start teaching our people so they can do their own research, to liberate them from accepting our or anyone else's opinion, but for them to See, because if they don't know these things, they can't see the tools that are being used to engineer our social economic condition. Now, this is why I always tell people, if you go to Washington, D.C., which is District of Columbia, because remember, Columbia is Roman goddess, or how Rome is ruling you here, all right? Everything is marble. And when you go in the entry, you'll see the copper brass plaque at the front door, and you'll see the States United with the small u, and you'll understand the corporate descendancy operations to some degree. And also the DAR manual, which is the manual for testing people relative to naturalization, i.e. citizenship under the occupied jurisdictions. So these things need to be known because different people will come here. They're sent through that system, but our people here are never going through naturalization, right? Why? Because they're the people of the land. So to cover up that's why they created the 14th Amendment artificiality and started talking about the Just Soleil legislation and legis, and that made people of color U.S. citizens, which is a fraud. You know, and this is where you get to what you call the 14th Amendment person who's really civil liter mortuus. And then you see people keep arguing the 14th Amendment person issue, the ens legis 14. That's why they argue that, because remember, that's a cover up of the Ulysses Grant's operation of the Whiggamore Party. But that's because after they got rid of Lincoln, keep this in mind, because you got to look at some of the chronology of the history. When they got rid of Lincoln, right, then Ulysses Grant came in. Then they altered the naturalization. I think that's around 1870. And for those of you who know jurisprudence, this is why in the law, in the jurisprudence, it tells you that free white people does not mean Caucasian race. But you know that our people don't know that, because they think that the free white people is an identification of the hybrid Europeans under the cotton wigs and the conscience wigs with the convention at Philadelphia. And if you don't know that history, you get deceived in the social reconstruction, which is why they have been able to convince our people with the 1492 BS of Columbus and the subsequent 1555 good ship Jesus construct of bringing our people here like sardines on a boat. All of that's reconstructed fiction. The people here are the people of the land. Then others who discover some of the real history will say that we're the real Hebrews or the real Jews, right? Which is all true, but even the linguistics in that is also corrupted, because we know it's not Hebrew, it's Ibri, IBRHIBR, right? Now, and this is back to them continuously burying us. By every 20 years or so, they'll create a whole new narrative and a connotated linguistic to further bury our people. Not unlike that, scholars know that Jew is a contemporary word constructed to cover up Saba. And so then when you go into what you call the history of religion, it traces you back to the Sabian or Sabian Moors, because that's where Saba come from, and that's where the word Sabbath come from. This is why people also confuse it with religion, their perception of what they think religion is. And so when they do that tracing, they start recognizing, oh, these are the real Hebrews. Of course we are. But that's an action. You see, and Hebrew comes from Ibri, which means those who cross the river, see, which is an action. So a registration of the anthropology of the migration is given a name. And that's a name of an action of the people crossing the river. This is dealing with time before Pangea. And then in the Septuaginta, or the Bibles refer to the dividing or the or what you call a super dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. But again, I'll continue, but I wanted to interject that. So if people are looking at the chronology of the anthropology and then let the hybrid Europeans do what you call contemporary interjection of connotative linguistics, they think that the people were called white and black then. They were not. You see what I'm saying to you? So that's how they've been controlling your vision. And so they tell you what to envision, and you try to build your competency off of that, and you will be disqualified. And I guarantee you, by law, not by intent, that if these things are not fixed, there will be no reparations. So don't let them fool you with that BS. Not that we shouldn't, because remember, how can there be reparations without decolonization? Because you're talking about the estate. Continue, Dr. J. I just wanted to interject that. Because it's severely important.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So first of all, for those who are not aware, I'm going to give you the Wikipedia definition of who the Daughters of America, or the Daughters of America, Daughters of America, Daughters of American Revolution, whatever.
And interjection, remind that they, from that foundation, that matriarchy, comes the citizenship manual that's used as a pattern around the world, but particularly here. Go ahead.
Okay, so what it says is that the Daughters of America is an American, I'm not going to read it all, secret society, nativist organization dating from the late 19th century. It was founded in 1891 as an auxiliary of the Junior Order of United American Mechanica. And I don't know, mechanics, I'm sorry. So I'm just, that's what I want to give you about that. So let me read this, what
read it
in this book. Daughters of America. What were the Daughters of America, or they call the Daughters of American Revolution? What were they revolting against?
Continue.
Their establishment was based on the promotion of history, preservation, education, and patriotism. It says, and there you have it. They are directly against the matriarchy, which is the Republican form of government here in America. A republic is based in matriarchal principles, not patriarchal.
Thank you.
Okay. Their quote unquote revolution certainly was not inclusive of the Moorish, Moabite, Asiatic, African, it's a woman, as she still thinks there is a revolution to come. And rightfully so, and we're in it, I believe, now in the midst.
Restoration of the matriarchy.
So, as it is her revolution, the Moabite, that must occur in order for humanity to live on in harmony, us, must wake up and recognize that she is the mother of the Daughters of American Revolution, and that they are revolting against her sons, of which those daughters, were concubines for.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is the Moabite, Moorish, Asiatic, African woman must recognize and begin using and teaching her daughters to use the science of the number 9, the science of the womb to invoke the powers and purpose of her womb to bring in the children of the great. As that occurrence can only happen as it relates to her and her womb, anything other than that will bring in something that is not connected to her or her cause, certainly not in a positive manner. The development of a fetus, Moslem, M-O-S-L-E-M, in the 7 stages of development upon the waters of her womb is then cut from the navel, Nav-L, N-A-V-L, and becomes a navigating L upon the 7 waters of the continent. The Daughters of the American Revolution were well aware of the science of the womb, and they utilized in their revolt against their history of being concubines for the Moorish sons. Yes, That is their history, and that is what they revolted against. The daughters of the American Revolution are the ones who created, as you just said, the citizenship manual for all those who come onto the shores of America, while the great Statue of Liberty looks on, Venus, as dictated in nature. Mother sets the agenda, and the sons play it out, enforce it, protect it, and direct it or supervise it. Moabite, Moorish, Asiatic, African sisters, it is the European Albion daughters that have used the signs of the womb and want to take your place, not her sons. He only does her bidding, as it ought to be. It was the Moabite Moorish woman who wielded her great strength in negative ways against her sisters. We talk about the Dora, right? Sisters, which caused the great fall of humanity. It is known as the fall of the great angel.
Now, this is why when you go anywhere around the world, and fortunately, as we just said, right?
Hold my finger here.
You see a lot of that history that our people don't recognize, that Putin keeps throwing out keys, statements telling you your history. Pay attention to Vladimir Putin, because he's dropping keys to the history. Now, I want to interject this. Now, many of our women who are now being disgraced publicly with the public narrative, now you know why they got you paying millions of dollars a year to wear blonde wigs. Yes, the mission has been to take your place, but also to make you defile yourselves. In other words, I'm showing you how the social engineering that our women themselves keep participating in, don't even know that they're being engineered. And then in the process, disgracing themselves to the degree that now they're being rejected. And rebellious while being rejected. Because they don't get why they're being rejected. Because they don't know the history. They don't know the chronology. They don't know the migration. They don't know the anthropology. They don't know the civil little more two status that we ourselves have pretty much participated in out of ignorance for not knowing the history, or that the republic was that they overthrew is the last vestige of the matriarchy. And now our people are out of ignorance promoting the Democratic Party, which is mob rule of Kaiklos, which is the Ku Klux Klan, against themselves because they don't know the history, which is again why we're having this identity crisis conversation, Dr. J. But I'm also saying to you in this that at the root of this, the social politics is geopolitics that would appear to those to not even be the subject. That's how distant we are from what's really going on. That's why it's a crisis. Now, what you recognize around the world is that the rest of the Asiatic world is starting to unite by necessity. And many of our people, as I said before, Dr. G, and I'll say it right now, many of the Asiatics here do not even relate to the war, that earlier war in Crimea, right? In Ukraine and in occupied Palestine that is directly politically tied to your awakening here on multiple levels, and it's not separate from you. But yet most of our people, not knowing the anthropology and the political migrations, etc., politically don't even recognize those activities being related to us here. And our rise or continuous fall. We're at an axis in world politics of things being done to stop you from really becoming aware and restoring the matriarchy. But if you know the history and the anthropology and the geopolitics, you know that it's absolutely tied to suppressing the matriarchy from or what you call rising. That's why they will never refer to the great Moabitess as the great Moabitess. They will call her the Black Madonna. No matter where they show her around the world, when they show it to you, they will show you as the Black Madonna. And that is not the Black Madonna. That is the great Moabitess, symbolically. And they know that the Jesus image represents justice restoration. And so when you see them in their chambers showing a statue of Mary and Jesus, which is really ISIS collectively. This is even why when they do their so-called proxy wars that the Jesuit order set up or created what they call ISIS as a countermeasure around the world. And most of our people don't know that when Kaiklos moves, they take their orders from the Dar. Absolutely. So people look at the Dar and they look at it as, oh, just some European women. But go ahead. But it's bigger than what you think it is. And the people you think is ruling ain't really ruling. Continue, Dr. J.
Thank you. As I said, about the great, it is known as the fall of the great angel. Many, we're talking about others other than us. Many wear the womb as a royal crown, except for the Moorish woman, and she is the mother of all civilizations. Clearly, she has been unconscious, and it is time now for her to awake so the quote-unquote great meeting can take place. I think this is happening. For those sisters who are in the secret societies, the Eastern Stars, etc., the secret is about you. You are aware of Esther, Easter, Ishtar, Isis, Astarte, Venus, an indication and proof that the universal language is that of cosmology. This is why you are called an Eastern Star, Venus in the Eastern Star. To my sisters who have not been previously aware, you may not be an Eastern Star quote unquote member, member, and you need not be, yet you are a star from the east. Venus, the cosmic mother, which rules Libra, Ma'at, and preserves the balance of nature with her scales of justice and sword of truth and retribution. It is time to rise from the ignorance and see you for who you are. Let me make sure I get this. And more importantly, for your obligation and responsibility to humanity. If you do not plan or plant to bring any more royal crowns here, please teach your daughters, who are the direct descendants of the founders of civilization, teach them ancient high science, culture, Gnosticism, cosmology, alchemy, geometry, algebra, numerology, astrology, architecture, mathematics, philosophies, and the science of the womb, as everyone else is drawing wealth and knowledge from it and wearing it, the symbol of the womb, atop their head as their royal crown, except for the mother of civilization herself. You, the Moabite, Moorish, Asiatic, African woman. And I yield. This is
that is called the Great Masonic Secret is the Matriarchy. And all of them will always wear the white womb.
Is that
that's the white fez?
White fez, okay.
And the womb, that fez represents the womb. You have 3 circles on the crown of that fez. It will be 9 in the center, 12 second, and 18 encompassing in 4 corners represents the universe. Then you have the finial, which would be the umbilical cord. Then you have the cord that's referred to as the silver cord attached to the universe. It would be circular. Then you have the ball of mud called Earth. Midgard. Then you have the 360 strands, and often when they construct them, they'll do it less for the sake of cost, except in an official fez. And those would be the tassel. And it comes from degree, from which you derive the word day, which is the dancing of the moon and the dancing of the earth, spiraling around the sun or behind the sun, which creates your bicameral chronology keeper of the record, Rosm, that you call calendars, which is bicameral of the moon and the sun. And then they altered that in order to throw you off with the chronology. But when you go into the studies of human endeavors with what you call the economies of the earth, they will give you what you call a mortarboard or cap and gown, and it will give you the circle into a square, and they will stitch from corner to corner like an X chromosome, and then they'll put the finial or the navel in the middle with a cord, also represents the umbilical cord. Then the ball of mud called earth with the tassels, and then you'll throw it up in the air when you so-called graduate and get prepared, being prepared to deal with universal knowledge, i.e. university. So where you should be getting erudition, they will limit you to education deliberately so that they can control you. And so the cap and gown is a duplication of the founders of the eternal zodiac, F-E-Z, Fez, and then graduate you, then control your output in your participation with civilization, and then deliberately limit you. So understand that anywhere on the earth, when they issue that cap and gown, that originates from the matriarchy, and it represents your degrees of erudition symbolically, and that belongs to you. But you can refuse to reclaim it if you choose to, which they want you to not do, so they can claim that you've abandoned your estate. This thing, this whole body of information has a metaphysical side that most of our people aren't taught. And this is usually, Dr. G, when you bring it up, why people, you'll see people who have, agendas in the game or skin in the game. It becomes very sensitive and they start attacking because they know when an understanding, overstanding, understanding of what this is all about really comes out, it represents the rise of the matriarchy. This is again why they do everything they can to suppress it and to misrepresent it. And many who deal with it always try to imply they got something to sell you when it cannot be sold because it's an issue of inheritance. It is a birth right. Who gives birth?
Women.
What happens when those 9 moons pass and gestation comes due? What does the
water breaks? Labor starts, water breaks.
And what do they look for?
Crown, head.
They look for movement of the moon because it always operates on moon cycles. That's why even when you're dealing with what? When you're dealing with the cosmology of astrology, people ask you, what's their sun sign, right? Mm-hmm. And what will a real Sayaraha tell you? Yeah, well, that's your presentment to the world, but the real you is the moon. Mm. that moon sign is really who you are. And even so, even when people are so-called teaching the culture, right, of Aquila, why do we relate to Aquila? Why do we traditionally on all sides of the water or Aboriginal people deal with Aquila crowns? Because the Aquila crown symbolizes Aquila, which the common people refer to as the eagle. And why do we use the eagle feathers? Because the eagle is one of the few birds that can look directly into the sun. And also has such insight or such sight that they can be miles above the land and actually see the smallest prey. And they can turn their heads 180 degrees. How much is 1, 8, and 0?
9.
Still implies the applied science of the number 9.
Yeah.
So when you put the feather in your crown or in your turban, which you'll see them doing all around the world, or sometimes you see them in the fez. Mm-hmm. Why do they have the Aquila crown? It symbolizes both lobes of the brain connecting. It represents 180 degrees. It represents 9. And now you have your perforations in the top of the crown in the 4 corners of the earth that deals with all nations. That's why in geography, they talk about the 4 corners of the earth and civilization, thus the interchange and the anthropology of the nativity offspring, i.e. the Muslim, from which you get the word Muslim, which means muscles, bone structure, hot hair follicles, and tissue, which is really what Muslim is. It has nothing to do with worshiping anything. It's a fetus. And that's the truth. And so all who really know how civilization is founded in the matriarchy that rule on this planet in their secret chambers always wear the fez, founders of the eternal zodiac. So the schisms that exist upon the offspring of the great matriarchy need not be that, but they can reject their lost estate. And as the hybrid Europeans did their operations of removing the people from the land, etc., they created the first operations of that corpse, the corporate person, artificial person. They created the Freedmen's Bureau to distract us from the issue of the right of estate. And it's called the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. Now, that 33-degree Mason that used to have our people marching all over the place, he said when he started recognizing that they was getting ready to sacrifice them, when he is no longer useful to them, he says, my people are refugees in their own land. Now, the Freedmen's Bureau was established in the year 1865. And this is what they told you slavery ended. They lied. They just bureaucratized it. And was an agency of the United States War Department. And when you look at the U.S. War Department, you'll see that's where they created the Bureau of Indian Affairs to continue their schism operations and the Trail of Tears operations, military operations. Having been established by the Congress, the actual and full title of the Freedmen's Bureau Agency was Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. Neophytes and scholars must remember that these days, 1992, this is what the time of this writing from the chronology records of events of the Great Seal Superliminal, Moore's Order, the Round Table, Northwest of Mexham, North America, North Gate. Anyway, so the masses of the subjugated natural peoples have not been taught the true history about the North Gate, nor about its natural peoples, which is themselves, being the Moors. And therefore, few are aware of the social, political trading of places brought about and actuated by the overthrow of the Moorish order of Islam and the subsequent empowerment of the Franciscan order, quote unquote, Franciscan order. These less known facts must be put in perspective with the red men tag taking on the otherwise forbidden status of quote unquote free white persons, quote unquote, and the Moors deemed as blacks, Negroes, coloreds, etc., should reject these brands, none of which rightfully applies to them, and their failure to rebut these tags constitutes a flawed reference source and promotes negating severe ignorance and deception. In conclusion, and with insight into the times as well as with a view into the prevailing politics, one can deduce at least some of the reasons and motivations expressed by Horace Greeley, the standing political and social fact in that time cycle is that the pale Negroes, Ibrida, Romans, red men could not be by status free white persons. Horace Greeley, being of high regard and influence within the Republican Party, designated that the pale Negro Europeans take upon themselves the name, quote unquote, white people. Keep in mind that free white persons relates absolutely only to social caste status and does not relate to pale skin's complexion. Then I'll give you a little bit and I'll release you on this. Mummers Parade, a pretentious and hypocritical show. A pretentious and hypocritical show is what the Mummers Parade was and is. Remember that Philadelphia became the capital of the United States Republic in the year 1790. And this is the same year of the signing of the Naturalization Act of 1790, signed by President Ulysses Simpson Grant. The European sons and daughters combined the tradition of the British mummery play with their custom of celebrating the end of the Gregorian calendar year. They would parade in groups, shoot firearms into the air, and shout out rabble and dodgery, swearing and speaking of trivial verse and rhymes. The participants would also sometimes wear curly wigs imitating the dark olive complexion Moors and cover their faces with coal tar or other substances that imitated the melanated skin. And the pale-skinned members of the Whiggamore Party have traditionally worn curly wigs to imitate the Asiatic Moors. So let us touch on mummery just a little, and I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Grand Sheik. Before we let you go, which we want to let you go by 10 o'clock because we did start a half hour late, we do have a couple of announcements that, we need to, it's getting closer to the time, Grand Sheik, for our event in our Spring into Action 2024 conference. Our confirmed presenters, just so you'll know, it's the 26th through the 28th of April. You can register on our website at www.houseofreawakeningminds.com. But our confirmed presenters for the 27th, our keynote is Empress Chakra Rarebird Ningret. We have, of course, our very own Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey, our brother Abdullah El Talib Mosti Bey, Consul General Maurice L, and brother Yakuba J. Rome L. There will be other things going on. Of course, the Friday night is our meet and greet And we, if you can be here on that Friday for that, and fine, we want you here. All the details actually are on the website, as well as the registration for that. And on Sunday, Grand Sheik will have our holistic day. And that's when you'll be able to get all kinds of demonstrations, and we have some awesome things planned for you for that. So we want to make sure that you all remember and know now who our confirmed presenters are for the 27th. We will show you. I'm not sure if you'll know the ones that are going to be on for the 28th, but last year we had a really good. The information and knowledge, and of course on that Friday night is just our meet and greet. I also want to say that I don't think I thought I put it up here, but I guess I made a mistake and didn't put it up here. But hopefully you all will tune in. Actually, look, Grand Sheik. So my solar return is coming up in 16 days. 16 days from now, I'll be older, and I am having a Earth Day bash. Are you going to
celebration? I'm going to be there.
Okay. So,
and for those of you who know the chronology and the history, among hybrid Europeans, which they don't talk so much here, but among themselves, and Moors and scholars, they call it Tag Day.
The 17th. I just happened to come out on Tag Day, y'all. But so it is. We're gonna have. I'm also going to be having at the same time now. When we have my party, we're also having one of my presentation for my business that I have. I have my own virtual dispensary, and so we will have samples, but we will have waivers that need to be signed.
Yes,
because some of that stuff. You remember the other week when you were here?
Yeah, when you were schooling me.
When I ate a gummy.
Yes.
And I couldn't take you where you needed to go. But anyway, so we know already what some of that stuff does. But yeah, it's here in Wilmington, Delaware on the 17th. It's a day party. I think that's fun. I think the older you get, the earlier you start.
That's true. Yeah,
okay. There's a day party. It starts at 4 p.m.
So they don't fall asleep.
4 to 8, and then you're out, and we hopefully you can come. And the last but not least, but I don't know what I did with the actual flyer. I thought I had uploaded it. We have on this coming Tuesday, Brother Eric Easy Carter, who is we're going to be talking about this is, I think it's up, but it's called when we're talking about going back to what's natural and true, why sacred plants could be the answer. And he's going into the history and where a medicine became a drug.
You really understand it, you'll understand why they banned it.
Right. So if you want to know about that, then you want to tune in on Tuesday night. I have an amazing guest going to be here Tuesday night at 8 p.m. I believe it is already up. It's going to be on YouTube. It's not going to be unfiltered. So 2 things. Tune in on Tuesday night and please go get your tickets. We need to know. We can't wait up to the last minute for people to buy their ticket. If you're going to come, you're going to come. Get your ticket. I understand some of y'all, it's the first of the month, so maybe you can, forego buying a new pair of somethings that cost about the same amount of tickets, and come on and be with us April 26th, 27th, and 28th. A good time and full of knowledge. And I know a lot, especially the sisters, we want that energy of Empress. We are in that position. Empress is going to be coronated at the beginning of the month. I believe the 4th, 5th, 6th is her event in Tallahassee, Florida, for those who can make it. And then she's going to be with us, fully coronated, on April 27th. She is our keynote presenter, and you want to get your tickets because there'll be a point where I'm going to just have to cut off the tickets because we can't, because we didn't know in enough time. We said by the 10th, how many were actually coming, whether we needed to procure a larger place. So we can't wait. We can't get you to wait. You can't wait till the end.
And logistically, it's not practical for us to go beyond that.
Right.
And also logistically, we've also, and I didn't say this before, but I'm saying this right now. That's what I said to you before, Dr. J. We've got to stop giving finance out to other venues.
Try to stay in our own.
Start using your own venues.
Right.
And do whatever necessary to expand.
Right.
No different way than you gave all that finance away to them before, and then things changed and they never even restored your finance. Meanwhile, you're enriching them anyway. How you say, keep your finance in your circle, which is another violation that we've been making of ourselves. no different than the practice that our people have had always, mortgaging churches and temples and synagogues to the occupiers, and our people going for generations supporting these expensive, complex buildings that they never own.
I'm looking at this little comment from GOP 3-year building fund. Hope you're not talking about us, because we haven't asked for anything for doing anything with the building.
Yeah,
for
one of the difficulties,
because we've been doing it
coming from the pocket.
Yeah, so we're not talking about a building fund. We're just talking about the fact that it is what it is as far as size, and we can't hold. We can only hold what we can hold, because you do get limits from. You get limits. There are limits, and you get limits. So you never want to, But anyway, it is what it is. Yeah, we want to work harder to work together, and I'm hoping that when you see where, let me put this back up again, because I want to put this back up, because we were talking about this. If you see from a perspective, if any of you know these presenters, that they all have different takes on the same objective, but different ways to get there. And House of Reawakening Minds is that place where you get to come with your piece of the pie and not have to feel
help to uplift,
and not feel like you have to be completely in line with everybody else to be accepted. We're not doing that. We're trying to find common ground here. Y'all can, not
bring
when I
the
say
people
y'all
back together.
Right.
We have to recognize our own diversity.
Right. And
that's always been. It's not just when the hybrids came here. Yeah. We got to recognize that in the different clans and tribes on different areas, for the most part, many of the traditions and customs, though similar, have evolved from what the earth had to offer us. Mm-hmm. And one thing about America is that America, unique from a lot of parts of the world, have all the climates that exist everywhere.
Somewhere.
You can travel across North America and go from tropics to very, very cold, to almost Arctic when you get near the Great Lakes in the wintertime.
Wow.
When you want to get cold, go up near Buffalo, New York, as soon as the weather change, and get some of that snow off the lakes.
Yeah. Well, listen, we appreciate you. We thank you for being here with us and supporting us, and whatever you do, sending your energy, positive energy. We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna need it. Like Charlie always said, you need each other now. You're gonna need each other even more so after a while. The after a while is already here.
It's here.
And recognize the uniting of Asia that's taken around the world. That's why it's important for us to really know the history, so we would comprehend the geopolitics that we're experiencing, that a lot of our people here think has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. Mm-hmm. Is our people, in other words, we have to start qualifying our people for estate heirship, even though they're not interested.
Right.
Because the deal, without it, you have no economic and political future, because you must be qualified to self-government, governing for real, not emotionally. So you need to understand and understand geopolitics, which is not a subject matter that has been taught openly with our people particularly. And the other issue is that you need to know the truth, that history and jurisprudence go together. They're taught together. We know that has not been the pattern, but that has not been accidental.
Well, yeah, let's pull this up then before we go. Is this the one? Right. Let me share this right quick. I don't know if it's showing up big. Let me go back over here. Let me tell you what it says.
Churchill.
You may not be able to see what it says, but I'll tell you.
Read it.
It says, is history really written by the victors? Is the caption or the title. Winston Churchill, and I'm not going to read all this. Winston Churchill once remarked, history is written by the victors, or so we are led to believe. A German might have said it in 1941 before Mr. Churchill later claimed it as his own. It is one of the most commonly cited quotes pertaining to the academic discipline of history, used to illustrate that history is often highly subjective because the people, groups, or nations involved will mold accounts to their own end. More specifically, the version of history written by the victorious people, groups, or nations, the more powerful ones, will usually win out over all the others. And that's all I'm going to read.
And today, what you'll find in geopolitics, it is called what we've been telling you for years. It is the hybrid Europeans hegemony operations known as unum sanctum. You will loosely, through the reconstructed history, keep referring it to as white supremacy doctrine. It is the hegemony operations of unum sanctum via the hybrid European, Germanic, Franciscan Brotherhood tribes, often hiding behind what they call odd fellows, Knights Templars, and different orders of Freemasonry. And you need to know something about your enemies. Even if you haven't chosen them as enemies, they've chosen you as enemies regardless. That's where the root of your mistreatment comes from. And also why they've made $1 billion business off of our women wearing blonde wigs. And they don't even know that it's funded by and made wealthy the daughters of the American Revolution. They own the stock. And our women think it's city girl culture. And they've been trained like animals against the rise of the matriarchy. That's part of the social engineering, meaning that we're even funding, without knowledge, our own suppression that we keep complaining about. That's part of the fall, too. They think it's just ancient. No, it's current, fallen angel.
All right, we're not going to start up again, y'all. But we're gonna let you go. We thank you so much. We're gonna leave with this so you'll know to register for the actual upcoming conference. I'm sorry. And though, like I said, and then anybody who's in the area on the 17th, I guess we need to say that again. You need to reach out if you'd like to attend, because we need the same number count for that. It's the same building, right, for that event. But anyway, get your tickets for our Spring into Action conference, and Grand Sheik and I are looking to meet a lot of you, most of you. Anybody who's going to come, we're going to meet you and love on you.
Yeah.
So we thank you. We thank you so much for supporting what we do. We appreciate it.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.